Welcome to Beyond Revenue, Narratives of Revenue Leaders. Catia, I'm very, very happy and pleased that you joined my show, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion today about driving growth through customer-centric strategy and operational excellence. I think when I see it correctly, you started your career as a researcher, yeah, and then going through various positions where you scaled revenue, where you lead global CX teams, and had various positions where you always were in charge of driving growth. I think we're going to have an interesting discussion about all the generation from your experience. But the best way to present yourself, I think, it's from your own than using my words. So maybe give us a quick heads up. Who are you and what are you doing?
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for having me here. I'm really happy that we can have this exchange and discuss about revenue, customer experience, leadership. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So currently I'm a global director of customer strategy and revenue operations in Fujitsu. And I've held several senior roles across Fujitsu, Samsung, Hewlett Packard. And I've built and led global teams across different geographies. Yeah, so I have a good broad experience in the IT sector that we can discuss.
Yeah, very impressive CV. Yeah, when I saw your CV and I want to reach out, it was like, wow, I want to speak with you because massive experience in scaling and changing and in change programs. That's maybe even my first question. So you've led massive change programs in global teams. What was the one transformative initiative that really challenged your leadership, yeah, or your leadership style? Where you said, "Look, that was a hard one, and I had to really rethink how I approach this."
Yeah, I'd have to say that it was launching a global marketing hub in the Philippines. I believe it was a game changer for me. So it entailed a complete transformation of how marketing operations were delivered worldwide in Fujitsu, impacting teams across multiple regions and time zones. So for me, the challenge at the time wasn't just operational, it was also cultural.
Mm.
So I had to align stakeholders with different expectations, overcome resistance to changing local processes, and build trust in a completely new
Mm.
delivery model. And that being done across multiple time zones, I feel that it tested really my ability to listen deeply to people and the need to adapt my communication style to different stakeholders and create a shared sense of purpose across different teams.
Fair enough. And
Yeah.
so the cultural differences on the European Asian
Yeah.
style, yeah. I used to work in
Yeah.
Thailand, so and I remember there was it's quite a different way of communicating to get what you want, yeah. And I can imagine it was especially on such a challenging environment or process or difficult processes is and
Yeah, and especially it was done during COVID.
uh,
The inability to travel at the time also was an added
fair enough.
challenge.
So you could no chance to build trust with a local meeting. Understand? When I'm correctly informed, right? You did a lot of B2B business scaling at Samsung, yeah. And looking back at your time there, what was one unexpected or wild growth moment that still makes you smile or still makes you say, "Look, that was crazy and we made it."
For me, it was definitely tripling our B2B display sales in just 1 year.
Wow.
So, as you probably may know, Samsung Electronics business is heavily consumer focused.
Hmm.
But we were able to leverage several B2B opportunities at the time, mainly in the hospitality and education sectors. So we, together with the business development, pre-sales teams, and some key channel partners, we reworked together our product positioning, adjusted pricing, and started first with small pilot projects that then exploded in scope.
Nice.
So watching those early wins like snowball into a sustained market leadership position for Samsung, it was incredibly rewarding.
Nice, yeah, that's good. And at that scale, right? Then, if 3x is definitely a huge amount. Congrats on that. Quite interesting. And you advocate for customer-centric approach, right? And you, I think, wherever you have been, you focused on transforming the approach to a customer-centric approach. What does customer centricity looks like at such a scale? Yeah, and how do you ensure that? Let's say it's not just a buzzword we wanna talk about, but we actually align and or we actually do it and have aligned this approach across function. What is it, what's your concept there?
Yeah, especially in large corporations like the ones I've been working for, customer centricity can't be just a slogan you
Mm,
stick on the wall, right? It has to be a discipline, and it needs to be designed into the way the business works. So it needs to be adjusted to the company where you're at.
mm,
And it basically means that you need to ensure that every function from sales to operations to marketing understands how their decisions impact the customer, and even if they're far from the front line. So every decision that you make in a company has an impact on your customer, every process that you design. So for me, embedding it starts with three main things. So data, shared ownership, and cross functional alignment. So, data in the sense that it can turn customer needs and perceptions into tangible
mm.
business cases. Something that we're doing, for example, in Fujitsu, linking NPS and churn metrics directly to revenue opportunities in each region. Shared ownership, for example, means that CX isn't just one team's activity. So it's not just my team's responsibility. So it's in the KPIs of sales teams, delivery teams, support teams. And alignment, finally, is about creating processes and forums where the different functions can work together on customer outcomes, not just their own
Mm.
priorities. So, for me, whether I was developing strategies, negotiating strategic alliances, or leading the global customer experience program, the principle is the same. So for me, it starts with the customer's reality, then translate it into measurable business impact and make it everyone's responsibility to deliver.
Okay.
For me, this is the formula that makes customer centricity stick in any organization.
And then you measure it through revenue success, or how do you measure that actually every
Yeah.
function is aligned?
Yeah. So for me, is the key is connecting the dots between how customers feel and what they actually do. So it's not enough just to have a great NPS score
Mm.
if it doesn't move the needle on renewals, growth, or advocacy. So I think of it in layers. So first, the experience metrics. So things like NPS, CSAT or customer satisfaction, sentiment analysis. Then you have the operational side where we make sure that we are delivering on time, resolving issues quickly, making it easy to work with us. And finally, the commercial outcomes, of course, renewals, upsells, share of wallet, lifetime value.
Mm.
So when you track all of this, you can start spotting patterns and see, for example, that in accounts where NPS goes up, tendentially, you can work with higher gross margins and and can see a growth in renewals.
Mm.
But of course, my favorite part is when happy customers come back for more. So even without even asking for a formal pitch, that's when you know that CX works.
Yeah, fair.
just about improving the score. It's building that trust that turns into long-term and high-value relationships.
Fair. So it always starts with the structure, getting it through, and
Yeah,
then use data to optimize. And I think
yeah,
you speak out of my soul, yeah, because that's what we're advocating for. We believe in structures and processes which help us to operate and then generate data to use them, and not just think about data. We want to use them, but it never comes in a structured way. Um,
and correct our path.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I
Yeah,
truly believe in data helps us to optimize, and
yeah.
not the other way around. So you're right, you have applied these RevOps strategies or the strategic customer-centric RevOps strategies in a global environment. And I'm quite interested to understand, especially a little bit talking to the back case there in your most challenging case. How do you balance on the one side, right? The standardizations, the aligned approach with the local nuances of handling their clients, and how do you get it done that it's still a success, right? Somehow you need to consider it, somehow just to a certain extent. What's your take and how do you manage it concretely?
Yeah, so actually, that's a very relevant point in this day and age. For me, standardization and localization are like two sides of the same coin.
Mm,
So, in global programs like the ones that I've been managing, standardization for me gives efficiency, consistency across regions, and like a shared language across the organization.
mm,
And then local adaptation gives you relevance, credibility, and competitive advantage in each market because each market is different and has its own specificities.
mm,
So that balance comes from defining the non-negotiables, I would say. So core frameworks, tooling, metrics, governance that create the alignment across the board, and then deliberately create some flexibility at the edges. For example, when rolling out Fujitsu's account portfolio and pricing strategies, we kept a consistent process for measurement, reporting, escalation, but also gave local teams freedom to adapt engagement approaches, messaging in their own market, solution packaging, for example, to fit their culture and business dynamics. But it also brings means like bringing local voices into design phase. So in that standardization, it's just not something that it's a set of rules that the headquarters imposes to the region. So we want to bring local voices in the design phase, maintaining that connection to the field and understanding the challenges, promote a culture well, global strategies shaped by open dialogue and
mm.
local insight. So you can then more easily scale the benefits of standardization without losing that impact that comes from knowing your customer's world inside out that local teams can bring to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, right, the combination of we standardize on a general approach and how we measure things and how we maybe have certain steps within the journey, and then we localize on the maybe the content side, the individual nuances of their needs on how to sell or buy. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's a very smart approach, and I truly believe as well it's quite necessary, right? Because it's not possible to throughout the cultures, especially that that it really works, right? Even on, let's say, in the DACH market here, where we would say everybody speaks German and it's just okay. Yeah, you have the Germans, you have the Swiss and the Austrians, and the Swiss by especially Swiss by completely different than the Germans. Yeah, you need much more detail. You need to be much more in depth. And in Germans, you need to be a little bit more faster. Yeah, strict and fast. So, and I think that's quite interesting from your experience on this global scale to cater to so many different needs as well.
yeah, exactly.
Um, so when you would give some advice to companies who trying to make RevOps let's say, a very strategic function, not just operational function, yeah, because that's what we see quite often. How do you approach it? Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes the name revenue operations, it's a bit misleading
Yeah.
in my opinion. So yeah, I think the shift needs to be from that function to be more to get out of that reporting department
Mm.
box, right? And get more into the room where strategic decisions are made. So I've been reading a book recently. It's called the RevOps Pendulum, and it was written by Haris Odovazic. And
Cool.
I absolutely recommend
Yeah.
to anyone
I
working in
wrote
this
a
area.
section. I wrote a section in this book actually.
Oh, wow. I must be getting there. So,
Quite cool that you mentioned it. Yeah, I really like it. I really like his approach and how he thinks about it. Yeah, that's very cool.
yeah.
Interesting that you know this. Nice.
Yeah, yeah, and he talks about, I don't know if you remember, he talks about mainly four pillars. So, process, enablement, systems, and data. And I've really seen that at play. I think he's absolutely right,
Mm,
and I identify myself with a lot that he has written, at least so far. I haven't finished the book yet. So the thing is, if you focus only on one of these pillars, the pendulum swings out of balance,
mm,
right? So when they're aligned, then RevOps becomes like the connective tissue between sales, marketing, customer success, operations. And in my role at Fujitsu, that means standardizing key processes worldwide while giving local teams some flexibility to adapt to their
mm,
market, as I mentioned before. It also means using data not just to measure performance, but to influence strategy. So, helping leadership decide where to focus resources, which opportunities to prioritize, and how to optimize the revenue engine.
mm.
So, for me, my advice would be starting with strategic alignment, not so much tools. So make sure that RevOps is enabling and influencing, not just executing.
Yeah.
And use data to tell a story and not just put numbers on a slide.
Absolutely. I truly believe in this because I think what companies sometimes misinterpret is say, look, the world has changed. We cannot do sales like we did 6 months, 60 years ago. It's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
fast and it's so connected that if you don't have an holistic view on it, on strategy, processes, system, and people, yeah, there's no
absolutely.
chance to generate data which help you to optimize. And I think Harris puts it there very much on the spot, and that this needs to be interconnected and they need to run together in order to be there. So thanks for sharing as well then your thoughts on such big organizations because that's the part, right? So and I think that what you just pointed out, not looking at the systems, I think the biggest challenge I see is that people or companies think that the system solves something. Yeah. And the system comes always second. Yeah. Who cares which system I use? I have so many systems for the same topic. Which fits is I need to define what's the topic, not define what's the system. And I think that's a good hint to hear this from your experience as well, because I think it brings another push to it to think more about the processes instead of the systems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about change because I think that's a big topic for everyone. And as you have brought so much change into it, how have you learned to, or what is your experience in building the momentum? Right, on the one side, you're structuring it, you bring hard change to it, but how do you get the buy-in not only from one team but from global operations and then getting all these different cultures and teams aligned? What's your general strategy on it?
One thing I've learned from all these programs is that transformation doesn't start with a project plan. Of course, you need to make one, but it starts with trust. And trust can look very, very differently depending where you are in the world. And also, another book that is really good reading is Erin Meyer's Culture Map. I think she really captured this, how cultures vary in
Mm,
decision making speed, communication style, approach to hierarchy. And I've seen this firsthand leading global programs. So, in some regions, you build momentum by presenting detailed, data backed plan up front. In others, you need informal conversations and relationship building long before the formal
mm,
pitch. So, when rolling out change programs at the global level, I know a one size fits all approach doesn't work at all. So I try to adapt my communication style and level of detail to each region. More structure and formal governance in some, more iterative discussions in others.
mm.
And that flexibility means people don't just agree the change, they feel part of shaping it. So for me, the big takeaway is that momentum comes from making people feel heard and
Fair.
respected in the way they're used to working. So
Mhm.
you need to get closer to them. So when you adapt your approach to their cultural context, you avoid like the us versus them mentality.
Fair.
Buy-in is becomes an accelerant of business instead of a hurdle.
Fair enough.
So for me, this is the big
Mm.
the big
Yeah, but it's
yeah.
interesting, right? So listening and learning from it, and then putting a big focus on communication, how to communicate, because I think it's important, right? But while being straight, right, on the things you want to achieve, but just in their, let's say, in their words, I think that's a smart learning. How do you ensure that they actually execute on the strategies you have defined? So, right, so you define something, you spoke with them, you drive change by communicating, but how do you ensure really operational, or how do you use data that you know that they actually execute in detail on what you have defined and enabled?
Yeah, for me, it's well, basically making sure that when we roll out a program, and I'm thinking, for example, pricing
Mm,
strategies that I'm involved right now, CX program, the idea we can't just share the vision or the strategy that we have. We also need to support the teams in building toolkits, aligning metrics to both corporate and local goals, making sure every region has a clear execution plan where everyone knows what to do and when to do it, with ongoing support from the HQ. And also another thing is also keeping the feedback loops very tight. So measuring, adapting, and celebrating quick wins so people can see that momentum building up. So basically, making sure that your plans and your strategies turn into that small daily actions on the ground that pile up into achieving your vision in the end.
interesting. And how do you align global and local leadership towards it? So how do you get them that they speak the same language while putting still their individual way of working into it?
Sometimes that alignment doesn't come easy,
Fair.
but yeah, but for me, it has to start with clarity
Mm,
and what you want to achieve and what you expect from people.
mm,
And it has to end with ownership, that share ownership. So when leading these global initiatives, what I start is by making the vision and priorities clear, why it matters, what success looks like, how they connect to the bigger picture. And then I work with each leader to translate that into specific measurable commitments for their
mm.
teams. So finally, I keep that alignment with regular check-ins, reviewing progress, helping them remove roadblocks, and making adjustments if and when needed.
Fair.
Uh, that way, alignment is just not a moment in a strategy meeting.
Mm.
It's like a continuous practice that keeps everyone rowing in the same direction.
Interesting. Now you have built up quite a lot of different teams, right? And I think the biggest challenge is always that we have on the one side the structures, the standardization. We have on the other side the performance or the empowerment of the individuals. How do you align or how do you build it? What's your focus on how to build a really high performing team and an empowered team? How do you get it done that is, when you have built it, it's actually there?
Yeah, so fortunately, I had the chance to manage teams and lead teams across the globe, with individual from multiple origins and multiple backgrounds, and that's incredibly rewarding. I feel that I learn more from them
Mm.
than they can learn from me, but for me to get that high performing balance in empowerment, it's setting not just a clear vision for the team and for what they have to achieve, but also giving people the tools and trust to deliver. And then, of course, holding them accountable in a way that helps them grow.
Mm.
Um, so Simon Sinek, and he's one of my personal favorites, leadership experts. He talks about the circle of safety, and this means creating a culture where people feel safe to take
Mm.
risks. And I think this is super important. I seen this daily on every team I've led. When I give people ownership over outcomes rather than prescribing every step, makes not only performance improve but engagement soar.
Mm.
So for me, it's like a balance of clear expectations and high standards, and giving people the freedom to figure it out, how to get there, while making them know that you will back them up no matter what.
So you leave them on the one side, right, in the guidance of the structure of build, but give them the freedom to experiment and operate the way which they quite interesting. And how do they foster it? So especially this experimental part, right? On the one side, you need to follow it. On the other side, open that you say the building or the main topic there is trust, right? That they trust in the culture, in the leadership, and then think what's can you share some maybe some stories there?
So, a few years ago, when I was leading the Global Marketing and Communications Center of Excellence, I launched an initiative called the Innovation Days.
Mm.
So, in these days, we brought together people from across different marketing and communications functions, people that don't always work side by side. They may not even know each other, and we created the space for people to pitch ideas, test concepts, and build on each other's perspectives without the pressure of of an immediate return on investment. So it's really was experimentation. Some ideas did take off,
Mm.
others didn't. But the real win was breaking those silos and
Mm.
bringing a mindset of we solve problems together. So making that cross-functional problem solving the norm for the team rather than the exception. So, and I saw that creating momentum beyond those sessions that we created, that was really the way we ended up working with each other.
Nice.
And I think that was a really great example of success and how you can do it and start
Fair.
creating that experimentation mentality.
Pretty cool. When you look a little bit back on your career, what career decision or own pivot was most defining for yourself, right? Which has the bigger impact where you said, look, I changed something drastically.
Yeah, I think for me was stepping into a global leadership role. So until I did it, I had my most of my work was regional or function specific. But when leading teams and programs that cut across functions and geographies, which each with its own culture and their own priorities, that was a steep learning curve.
Mm,
I felt that I had to build a whole new leadership toolkit. So that meant learning how to align people who measure success differently, adapting my communication style for different cultures, as I mentioned before, creating some decision making frameworks that could work across time zones. So, for example, asynchronous decision making. So, have tools like Miro, using Teams chat, and also when something that needed more interaction face to face, did calls and rotate those calls across different time zones to make give the people the chance to be present,
mm,
and of course using data as a common language when opinions differ.
yes,
So I think that the main thing is that influencing is it over control. So uh, I think what makes things happen at scale is that making sure that you can influence people, bring them together with
mm,
you in your vision, not really control them.
fair enough.
Um, and I think that really shaped how I view leadership since then.
Interesting. When you can give one piece of advice to let's say, an emerging leader who wants to have a real impact on what they do and maybe rise like you have risen, what would it be?
Yeah, I think one thing that was key for me was learning to speak more than one language in business. So, making sure that you speak marketing language, sales language, operations language,
Mm,
and going, you don't need to do it like I did, was basically experience different departments and build that knowledge from within. But you can also do that by connecting with people, um, talking with people from different areas, different geographies as well, and build depth in more areas than your own areas. So get curious, listen, build relationships across the business. That's how you can stop being seen as one department's leader and start being
mm,
seen as the go to person when people want to move the whole organization forward. So I think that for me was the key thing, and that's my main advice.
cool. Katja, thank you very much for your time. Super interesting perspective on things. I think you have proven yourself all over, and I think we saw this in this discussion. Really learned a lot. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Michael, for having me. It was really nice to have this discussion with you and learn that you also contributed to Ari's book. When I get to your part, I'll ping you.
Yeah, fair enough. Looking forward to your feedback.
Of
Cheers.
course.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye bye. Thank you.